So I am here today and privileged to be speaking with Melissa Montano, who is the Opry Program Manager, Mr. Thomas Stark, who's the Chair of Recovery Communities of New Mexico, and Natalie Rivera, who is the New Mexico Behavioral Health Planning Council Liaison. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Rosario.
Thank you, Rosario.
So this month, September 2024, is Recovery Month, and we're all really excited about all of the events happening in the community. And we're privileged to find out from you all what's happening in and around New Mexico and then nationally too. So if you could please tell me, Mr. Stark, a little bit about Recovery Month and what it means nationally, and then also to the New Mexico communities here.
Well, Rosario, thank you very much. And thank you for this opportunity to both talk to Recovery Month and about all the great things that are going on in New Mexico, because we are extremely proud the progress New Mexico has made over the last 10, 11 years. Since the very first recovery celebration in Taos, I think in 2013, to today, when we hope this year, we've already started, there will be 27 recovery events all across New Mexico, multiple events in Albuquerque, but what we're also proud of is many, many small communities, Raton, Shiprock, Lordsburg, Carlsbad, all kinds of places are having their own recovery events this month. And it's just absolutely great to see these small communities, the recovery part of those communities, stand up and get recognized for all that they do, but more important, for the courage of people in recovery to go through what they've been through and now be in a position where many of them are peers and certified peers, and they're giving back. They're putting what they've learned to work to help others. So, we're just really, really excited about, what we've accomplished with recovery, and, just absolutely thrilled to see where this is going to go next.
2013 to 2023 is a long haul. What is different from when you started to the events that are happening in and around New Mexico now, aside from the addition of different locations and reaching those further areas that are, more remote or rural?
Well, it's a great question. And one of the things that's really different, that's been a huge shot in the arm for these recovery events, is the rollout of the Certified Peer Support Worker program. And the fact that it's reached all corners of the state, because a lot of the advocates, a lot of the people who put their shoulders to the wheel and make these recovery events happen are certified peers and certified peer teams, and the companies that employ them make a huge difference. And so as the certified peer program came online, Militia, I don't know how many we have now.
We're close to 800 if we haven't gone over.
Well, 800 people now across the state, making a contribution as peers. And they're front and center in all these recovery events. About 6-7 years ago, we started really making a big deal of certified peers. We started encourage them to tell their stories and to be part of it, because a big part of these events is not just celebrating the people in recovery, but letting all the people who aren't in recovery, who will never have a problem with addiction, to get to meet the certified peers, because most of the peers are absolute heroes. And, the mayors, the city councilors, the businessmen, need to get to know these people in their community and need to realize that that's part of what makes their community great. And until we got this interaction going, I don't think there was as much realization of how big a part of New Mexico's success recovery is.
You know, as you speak about the introduction of peers and the role that they play, these events really do help to decrease the stigma about recovery and what it means for a whole community, I think, in that regard.
Oh, absolutely, because, you know, the peers are fixing people's cars. They're, you know, teaching in school, some of them. I know one who's teaching in college. And they're part of what makes communities great. And if these people weren't in recovery, the communities wouldn't have all these services. So absolutely, recovery events really are about community. They're usually sponsored by one organization. I went to the Soul Cafe recovery event in Albuquerque last Friday, and there were 50, 60 people there from all over Albuquerque participating in what is really just a new concept startup for recovery in Albuquerque. And it really, I believe peers in New Mexico are going to change this state for the better in ways we have no idea of yet.
You know, Militia, because you're the program manager for Opry and you bring peers into and train in this really large community, what roles do peers have, would you say, in these recovery events?
They have every role. When they step up to the plate and apply for a grant from, you know, because Tom and Natalie and the group have put together, and it's getting bigger and bigger. I mean, this is my third time interviewing Tom, and this is your first. And you know, and before I became the program manager, we went all the way up to Chama. And that was the most amazing, you know, event that I mean, that was my first event. And I knew then, you know, that the stigma around what Tom's talking about, it's breaking it down, and it's bringing small communities together. And what I love about Recovery Month is that at these events, I get to be a peer, not a program manager, because this is a we thing. It's not an I thing. It's not a, you know, a program. It's a culture. I believe that peer recovery is a culture, and it's, you know, just because we have it as a model doesn't mean that. I believe that everybody deserves it, and every community, if they don't this year, they're gonna know about it next year. You know, so, and then the hard work behind the line, behind the, you know, the curtains, who's making it happen, and, you know, and who gets to go, and the kids, the children, the families, the grandpas, you know, the abuelitas, holistically. You know what I also like, Rosario, is that our faith-based communities coming together, you know, and we recover out loud. You know, we wear our hearts on our sleeve. I always said I do. And today is just, you know, it was amazing, because this morning I got recertified. And I told Miss Kathy at the board, I said, this is one of the most amazing feelings of my day, of my morning. And because we get busy, I talked to Natalie this morning, we're super busy, but I had to stop and take a moment and just reflect and remember how I got here. And if, you know, if we didn't have this platform and seeing the faces that we do at these events, you know, it's even gone as far as the bikes, the motorcycles, and, I'm so excited. I'm super excited to be part of this. And our team, our Opry team, will be out there with them blue bandanas that Tom started up, and hopefully everyone has one, is wearing one. The pets it's for everyone. And I know that Natalie probably has a lot more to say too on that, but I hope I answered the question, because,
Yeah,
you know, I'm gonna go off.
peers are important, you know, but you
You
brought
are important.
You brought up a good point because Natalie was just recently at one of these peers events and she sent some photos back to post in social media. And as you mentioned, Militia, it's a culture, right? For everyone, for the organizations that are supporting the collaborations that go into it, that I want you to talk a little bit more in a minute about Mr. Stark. But Natalie, if you could talk a little bit about what it feels to attend one of these events as both somebody that's tabling, somebody that's in the community, somebody that's a supporter, and what that looks like, it feels like.
It's an incredible feeling. As soon as I'm even driving up to an event, we had two of them actually three of them. Started with Santa Rosa, which is a new community. They did have one last year, which was a recovery artist show, that they presented their work. And this year's theme is the art of recovery. It's for our folks to show with their artwork that they are able to overcome and shine in a different light, showing that they have abilities that are beyond what they ever expected. And, whether it's mental health that our folks are struggling with or substance use disorder, going to this events, there's different ways of, sorry about that, different ways of finding their path to recovery. It could be through their artwork. And, we moved into the soul recovery where it was very holistic, where there was prayer, there was smudging, there was healing. And then we move into the art show in El Chante downtown, where artists are able to present their work through their recovery journey. They are able to present at a gallery downtown Albuquerque and showcase their artwork for a full month. So, and then I get to meet those artists. I get to meet the individuals that have gone through it, and then the folks that surround them to support them in their journey. There was over 100 people this year at the Albuquerque Art Show downtown. And it was just so humbling. Some have poetry, some have artists who are singing. And it was just, it makes my heart happy to be at these events, see how far we've come with the help of so many of you all. I've got to thank Behavioral Health Services Division for continuing to fund in small amounts to these communities so that they could host their event. I've got to thank, our staff who go out there and support our folks so that they know these are the individuals that we're working for daily. So that's the feeling I get. And I get the feeling that we are breaking down the stigma. We've got providers, we've got legislators, we've got county officials, city officials that come in and join and get to meet the folks that are making the difference. So it's been a pleasure for 10 years now.
If you could tell me a little bit about the heavy lift that goes into organizing these types of events, the collaboration that takes place. And then also you have quite a varied landscape of events taking place, from runs to, like Militia said, to bike events. I mean, the amount of organization and feedback from these communities of what would bring people out. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think is really important is each community has its own culture, and they bring that culture to the event. And that's what's really powerful is it's not just a cookie cutter, we do it this way. It's whatever is important to the recovery community and the big community in each place we go. So it's a mixture of their culture. The other thing I really want to stress is it's not just recovery, because with a lot of small towns, you have the same people serving in many different ways. Las Vegas, not this year, but the last few years, has had a suicide prevention run or walk. And so the suicide prevention team worked together. When Pecos had their event a few years ago, they had a pet adoption as part of the event. So there's just a whole spectrum of things that come together When Farmington does their event, or they did in the past, I don't know if they're doing it this year, but they had the law enforcement night out. And in fact, the police officers and firemen were up on the dunk tank, and people were trying to get them into the water by throwing the balls and whatnot. So it integrates a lot of community functions in addition to recovery, which is really part of what's important about making recovery a normal part of every community, is it fits in with all the other normal parts of communities. Now, in terms of the events and how we do them, Recovery Communities really just has a template for how to do an event. And we provide guidance on, what the events have to be. And BHSD graciously provides a little bit of seed money, a few $1,000s typically to each community to get the event going. But our experience is for that $2,000, the average event probably costs $10,000, and some of them, like Albuquerque's big event, probably up to $50,000 to put on. So it's not just the recovery community or the state, it's the whole community coming together making contributions. Some of them are like people who are in the behavioral health provider field, our MCOs like Blue Cross, Presbyterian, now I believe Molina and United Healthcare have been big supporters. And then the different major providers are big supporters as well. So, but we've seen car dealerships, restaurants providing food. It just goes on because they are community events and the whole community comes in. Now, in terms of what happens at those events, the themes can vary. There are art shows like Natalie mentioned, both in Santa Rosa. There's one toward the end of the month. No, there's one that's already kicked off in Albuquerque. And in fact, that art show in Albuquerque runs all month, the downtown art show that Natalie mentioned. A couple of years ago, Santa Fe had Cheryl Shepard, the voice winner from Farmington, do a concert. And we're getting a lot more concerts getting included in the events because they draw people. And a lot of the performers have their own experience or family experience with addiction, and they're glad to come up and do the concert as part of even just telling their story. We have a lot of ones that have animals. The Santo Domingo Pueblo had one last year, and they had a recovery horse event where people could pet the horses, and they had horse rides and everything as part of the event. So animals are a big deal. I think we have at least 2 powwows this year. We're going to have one in Albuquerque later in the month. And then I think there's also a powwow going to be in Socorro, which did a powwow last year, which is really impressive because I didn't normally think of Socorro as Native American country, but in fact, they drew a huge number of pueblos and tribes from around Socorro to participate, and they had the huge covered county fairground, the arena just filled with people. So it was a fantastic event, and of course the county government was there totally supporting it. I got to meet a lot of good people. Militia mentioned bike rides. Pewaukee does a bike ride. And what's really amazing is state police participates in that bike ride. And the first speaker got up and said, in fact, I think that was you, Militia, who sort of said, it's the first time in my life I was following the police instead of them chasing me.
Absolutely. And then the red lights, I mean, they got, clout to go through those red lights. There's nothing, the feeling of being able to follow a state police officer on a motorcycle is the best. It's just the best. And too, Rosario, I forgot to mention that the wellness centers that OPRI funds and BHSD funds, they have their own thing. I've had the pleasure of visiting Shiprock. You mentioned Shiprock, and the stuff that they do since early morning is just what Natalie talked about, holistic, sweat for women, sweat for men, even their food at lunch and the prayers and and the burning of sage before, and then the whole the the folks that run the wellness center in itself, that meet on a monthly basis, the board of directors, or for the wellness centers, they all showed up there, and it was just an amazing event. I have the rock on the back because I love this. I got pretty close to taking a picture of this rock not too long ago at the last year's event, and I just fell in love with what happens down that way, and Gallup, you know, just all over. I mean, you mentioned 27. I remember, like, from last year, there's 5 more than we did last year. And then, you know, what's really, really fun is too, when we have all our swag together, we're in that, that big, room over there filling up stuff to send out to communities, because it's for them, you
And
know.
yeah, you mentioned all of these different events, and Tom mentioned how everybody, it's a culture and it's inclusive to those communities. But I don't think there's enough mention of how you guys everybody from the wellness centers to the organizers to the community members to, all of the participants, make it as inclusive and accessible as possible. Not only are these events free to the community, but all ages can come, right? Everybody can participate, whether you're in recovery, a supporter of recovery, a peer thinking about recovery, a provider. It's truly accessible. You do a fantastic job of being so inclusive.
Yes, and I think the other group in terms of inclusion that needs to be mentioned is the members of the Behavioral Health Planning Council. All were aware of the event and participated in the events in their area. BHSD had tables. When we rolled 988 out, BHSD had a table at almost every event, and several of the different staffers there took turns going to different events across the state to make sure that everybody learned about that. And then a few years before that, BHSD, when the big Narcan rollout came, was training people in using Narcan and handing out Narcan at these events. So, let's not forget the heroes in state government. But in addition to BHSD, CYFD and DOH frequently showed up with booths, with information, with education at these events. So a lot of the health areas of the state have been big participants, and that's not to forget all the county health organizations, which almost always show up at these. And then the criminal justice. We frequently get probation and parole. A lot of the DWI programs show up and exhibit. In fact, there was one where even the public defender showed up and they had a booth. It's recovery is for everybody. It's about everybody. And that's been what's been so satisfying, is just encouraging people to have these events. And there's some of them that don't come off quite as well as the organizer hoped, but we encourage them to keep going, to try to do better the next year, and to really reach out and partner more, because the events that seem to do best are the ones where they partner with a lot of other organizations, and those organizations learn about recovery, and recovery people learn about them as well.
What would you say, Tom, if you would, is one of your success stories from an event? You have a personal success story or one that you could share about why these events are so good?
It would be impossible to pick one. There are just so many great stories at these events. I mean, the Albuquerque Plaza downtown filled with people. The number of people at the events who show up and say, I need help.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
almost always have somebody at each event who's there and knows how to help those people access services and what they need. And so if I had to say one thing, it's that when somebody, many times by accident, stumbles upon a recovery event and hears all these people telling their stories about how great their lives are now that they've moved beyond what they were struggling with, and seeing those people, just sort of say, I want that, is probably the biggest event. The other thing I'd mention is in Santa Fe, a few years ago, well, several times, we used to have a recovery board. And the idea was anybody could write any message they wanted to on it about recovery. And this young woman came up and she wrote a message, and it was very simple. I have been clean and sober for 18 days and I am so grateful.
Yeah. Wow.
And so if I had to say one thing it was giving that woman some place to express her gratitude.
That's a wonderful story. Natalie, as you go out to these events, I know you're going to be tabling that as a few, and this question also applies to you, Tom, and you, Melissa. It would be, what is the one thing that you want attendees to take away from this year's event? Whichever one they go to, or multiple ones.
That one's easy. To know that we're there, that there's support out there, that there's a phone call away, or there's a resource booth at that event. Albuquerque's a good example of that. Numerous times people would come up to me and tell me, I don't want to live. Every morning I wake up and I don't want to be here. I could actually grab that person by the hand and said, come with me. Let me have you go talk to this person. That's what I want. I want us to be able to be there, open-minded, with no stigma attached, for them to truly know that we're there for them. We want to save your life and allow you to have another day with your family, with your friends, and the support is there for them. Just the other day, I was at an event and a mother came up to me and said, Natalie, I remember you from last year. I took your 988 cards and your magnet, and it's been on my fridge since. My daughter struggles with mental health. She has called 988 4 times and she's still alive today. I was at another event the other day where a gentleman showed me his 988 tattoo, that he has not wanted to take his life for now 2.5 years. And he made a promise to himself that he would get that tattoo as a reminder. So just those stories that keep repeating themselves tells me that all the hard work that Tom, Lauren Levis, who we adored, and I want to thank her for everything she did for this committee. She is dearly missed. And Tom for holding it together for so long. I worship the ground you walk on, Mr. Tom Stark, and I don't want you to go anywhere, but I know we've got to give him a break sometimes. But you've given our state and the members, the family members, the folks who need the help, such possibility of getting better. And that's what I want to see at every event, is that if we just touch the lives of 1-2 individuals, and we're breaking down the stigma. I know it, I feel it, and I see it at every event I'm at.
I remember when I first met Tom and he said, I think we should have about, was it 5,000 or 10,000 peers in New Mexico?
Well, it was 10,000. We weren't going to
very
go
positive.
low.
Yeah, and I'm like, what?
Slow down.
Slow down, Tom. You know, I just, Rosario, when you say, you know, what's the takeaway if we had one? Just, I think we're all going to mimic that, you know, if somebody gets clean that day and says, I need help, I think, that event has done what it's supposed to do. And what really gets me is when I wish every treatment center and every IOP could bring their people to an event near them. I wish they could have the buses just bring them in so that they can see that it's possible and that they deserve it. We all deserve.
I
And
don't,
some do that. I have seen a lot of our providers bring in, last year, we met numerous people from the Santa Fe Recovery Center that were at the event, and same within Albuquerque, the dancers from the women's program there. And just to have those folks be part of it is just priceless,
Yeah,
absolutely priceless.
You know, the other thing I want to mention in this is just, I really don't want to forget the Pure Warm line. We talk
oh,
about
yes.
988, but the Pure Warm line gets more calls. And for a lot of people, it's made a huge difference in their recoveries. And I think we should just always remember how important that is. The other thing, which I think is just starting to get traction, is the state does support an online 5 actions program to support people in recovery. In many cases, people who can't get into a treatment program or a treatment program won't work for them have been able to find the support they needed through that 5 actions program. So, one of the things we do in all of these events is roll out information about what's available, because each person's path to recovery is different. And so what the state does that's so great is just create a whole bunch of options and let people find the option that works for them. So uh, it really is important to remember that these are a place to put resources out there for people to consider. And it may be everybody at the event is in recovery and they don't need the resources, but they all know people who do. And that's why getting the word out, even to that community, is still so important, because, BHSD and the other departments are working every day to make their programs better. And, if there had to be one message about these events, it's just simply that recovery is possible.
Yes.
everyone does such a fantastic job of bringing their time and their talents and their skills and their education to these events. And they leverage them for the whole community to come and get resources. But I think if you've never attended one of these events, you should, because the level of care and empathy and love for each other, for the community that's there, and for those people that are struggling, like, Natalie said, both with addiction, and substance use and or mental health.
Yeah.
People just care in New Mexico, and it's because of all of your efforts and the community's efforts that we're able to show up, for everybody and for each other. Tom, you have a lot happening. What are you gonna do to keep the momentum going beyond recovery month? Not that anybody's gonna let you breathe through September, um, but what do you see happening in the near future and then coming up?
Well, in the near future, I'm just going to as many events as I can, because being able to go to the events is the payoff for all the work that we do early in the year to, help people get their events set up and getting the money out to them and everything else. But the payoff is just being able to go there and see and meet the people and talk to them and whatnot. So and in fact, this year, next Saturday, my wife and I are going to drive down to Silver City to see the
Awesome.
that is being put on there. So that's the immediate thing. Longer term, I think we've just got to really bring the power of peers to supporting recovery. We've got to get, I mean, I wasn't joking when I said we
I
need
know.
10,000 CPSWs because we don't have enough professionals in the state to do everything that needs to be done. And we're going to have to find our own way using the great talent that we have. And so I totally honor BHSD and all the other departments and all the things they're doing to try to find a path forward for New Mexico, because there are, I don't know, I saw one estimate of almost 200,000 people in New Mexico who are struggling with addiction, who could actually be holding better jobs, making a better contribution if they could just get the help they need and take over their own lives again and move forward. So I think that's really what I hope to see happen next, to move beyond all the good things we've done to the good things we're gonna do and get to I say this a lot and people laugh at me, but I believe there will come a day when addiction is no longer an issue in New Mexico.
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to that day because I believe recovery truly is possible for everybody, and I can't wait for the recovery month where we celebrate that fact.
I think our goal should be 10 years, 10,000 strong, right? Because
I like it.
There
we'll
you
live
go.
up to
You
your
must be in marketing.
a little bit, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a wonderful goal to have for all of us, right? For peers, for Recovery Month, for contributors, for agencies. I think we can do it. Tom, Natalie, Melissa, thank you for your time today. I'm so grateful and I'm so humbled at just who you are and the efforts that you put towards making New Mexico better. It makes me really proud to know that you live in my state and that there's people like you that are doing such fantastic work for everybody, for the benefit of everybody. So I
Thank
appreciate
you, Rosario.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Rosario.